Okay.
Yeah, hello everyone. Welcome to the Professional Relationship Manager podcast. This is Kurt Phelps, and I have a wonderful guest, Ines Lebow. Hi, Ines.
Hi, thank you for that nice intro.
So Ines, who I will tell you is one of the most wonderful, fantastic executives I've ever known. And we're going to talk a lot with Ines today, and we're going to go through her background. And she is the CEO and calls transformational executive for Enterprise Transformation Solutions. So why don't we talk a little bit about your company? It's been around since June of 2015. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your company and what you do?
Okay, so for the last 35 years until 2015, I was in companies and I was recruited in to transform, re-engineer, change companies. And out of the 12 companies that I was in, we exited 9 of them successfully. And I was always in charge of operational re-engineering. I would say that I was an operational and financial architect. And so what happened was we sold our last company in 15, and I made a decision at that time that I didn't want to go back into a company. And so I started Enterprise Transformation Solutions. And the interesting part about that is I called it transformation, because transformation means therapeutically, it means to change from within. And that's what I do. I change companies from within, coming up with solutions to get companies to the next level of profitability.
So and I have to ask this question because, first, I graduated as an engineer, and I own a very large high-tech recruiting firm. You've had a long, successful, wonderful career in the high-tech world. How did it start? How did you get into the high-tech world to begin with?
So that's a really interesting question because everybody asks me that question, right? So it's really kind of a funny story. When I first started off, I have 2 degrees in languages and linguistics, and I have 1 degree in administration. And I quickly, and as part of my career, I did want to go be a lawyer, but I was in that stage, unlike today, where women weren't really accepted into being lawyers or doctors. Today it's different. But so a friend of mine was in a company called American Satellite Company, and she said, "Oh, listen, they have an opening for a project manager, and it's a satellite company." So I said, what the heck? So I went and I interviewed for the job, and I got the job, and I get in my car after the interview and I go, oh my God, what's a satellite? What is project management? I had no idea. So luckily they sent me to George Washington University, and I took engineering classes and telecom classes and satellite classes. And I went to night school doing that. And then what I found out is they put me in charge. Here I am, green. I'm pretty green, but they put me in charge of building Greenfield, our national network. The ground segment of the network speaks to the satellite. The satellite really is just a giant amplifier, and it has to talk to something. So it talks to the ground. So here I am working, the only female, in a technical detailed environment, dealing with satellites and antennas and fiber and leases and landlords and unions and all of that. And I had to manage people. I had to learn, to do detailed plans, and I was hooked. It became part of my DNA because I love growing things, which is what we did. We grew this network nationally in Hawaii. And then, I love growing things. I like fixing. I like the before and after picture. And then of course we like to exit as well.
Mm. I mean, a lot of the companies you've worked for through the years, I've had a chance to work with, or I know very well. If you look at women today in the executive world, in the high tech market, I mean, how do you think things have changed? How have you progressed? Through your years to work with a lot of these challenging companies of Broadsoft and Megapath and all these companies and succeed and grow as an executive and be a part of all these acquisitions. And, what do you think as you evaluate yourself and you had to, advise others in the marketplace that have gone through? What do you think, what would you advise them going through their career?
So I would tell you that not much has changed, right? Being a female in a technical environment, not much has changed. And you have to really be focused on the task at hand, and you have to execute. That's how you overcome any and all objections, right? So you have to execute, you have to focus, you have to be self-aware, you have to be centered. And, I would consider there was a lot of politics around that. There was a lot of things around, how I was basically treated in that environment. But I learned to just ignore it because I was focused. I knew what I wanted. I wanted to get to the highest level of a company. I know how to run operations, and I just focused with my people on what needed to get done. So my feeling was I didn't necessarily need to be liked by everybody, but I certainly know I was respected for my work.
As you progressed, when you made these job changes, what was a typical process for you over the last 10, 15, 20 years of when it was time to change companies? How did you approach looking for your next role?
Oh my God, I wish we would have had Hello Phello. I probably did what everybody else does today, right? So when we were in between companies, we would sell a company, and either my partner or I would be looking for the next company, right? I had a partner through a lot of this. And so I said, well, I better start looking for a job, right? So I did. So here I am, like everybody else. I am at my job. One job, we bought a company, and it was bankrupt. It was a bankrupt company, and we had no money, and we had 700 employees, and I moved the company to Missouri, and it was 24/7, 7 days a week. So I didn't have time to build relationships, to keep up with, everybody I knew, to let them, I didn't. So every time it was truly like, I didn't really know anybody anymore. I had to start all over again every single time. That's what happened. And so when I met you, Kurt, and I had told you that I had started my own company, and we talked about Hello Phello. Oh my gosh, really? Of course, I joined LinkedIn, but it's really meaningless to have LinkedIn if you aren't connecting with people, if you're not staying in touch with them, and you're not letting them know, what you're doing, what are they doing. Building, as you like to say, and I believe it's a relationship, right? And I see it today because I have people calling me, who are looking for jobs, and they just launch right into, like, I should do their job search for them. Mm. So using Phello, when I started my company, we downloaded all the contacts, and then we put them all in buckets, right? The CEOs and investors and lawyers. And then as it built, I started off when in April 15, I had 500. Now I have over 4,000 contacts, and it's keeping up with that. That gave me right out of the gate the ability to do a campaign. So we did a campaign, and and that was only 500 contacts at that time, 500 contacts.
Mm-hmm.
And we did the campaign, and it was unbelievable. People who I hadn't talked to in 30 years, who for some reason in your head you think, oh, they're not going to want to talk to me or whatever. It was amazing. They reached out. We had phone conversations. Two people knew about job openings, which was if I was looking for a job, and one of them insisted I go through the interview process. So I did, because he was, he connected with me after 30 years, and I did that. So in that scenario, I would have had the ability just right out of the gate, boom, I would have been able to find a new position. In the meantime, since then, we do quarterly campaigns to stay in touch, very short, and your videos, give you the narrative, short narrative, right? So people don't read anymore. And I've gotten quite a few leads. Actually, the good news was this past week ago, Monday, we did a campaign on the 14th and 15th of November. And one of these, my LinkedIn contact reached out to me, and it might be potential business. I need to follow up. But so it's a huge difference, to answer your question.
So how do you think, I mean, when you look at companies today, because of course, you're coaching and advising today for many companies. I mean, that's your strength. Everybody wants your experience today. And I think that was one of the wonderful things that, that I believe that you learned through this process, which was the most important initial, was after all these years, what are people going to think of me? Right. And I've met all these people in the business world, but the key is, will they think that I'm, what do they think about me personally? And will they use me? And do they want my advice? I mean, I think that's what we all want. And without question, I was amazed with the quantity of people that wanted your advice. And that was just that's a big reward for you after a wonderful career, to know so many people wanted to get your opinion. And, that's where I think most people are the afraid factor of reaching out to the network. Listen, we're all people at the end of the day, but the key here is, what do you hear from the companies that you're working from when it comes to from finding talent or struggling finding great talent? I mean, what are you hearing from all the executives that you're dealing with when it comes to hiring today? What's going well and not well with the tools that are out there today, between LinkedIn and job boards and stuff of that nature? What have you heard or hearing?
So it's interesting you asked that question. I just had this conversation. So they go on LinkedIn, right? They put their job posting on LinkedIn or Indeed or wherever they go, right? And they get this huge number of candidates. It's a huge number of candidates. And how do you sort that? And then they do these keywords, which isn't perfect. It's not perfect. And they miss out then on potentially a lot of good candidates. And so a lot of particularly the CEOs, what they're doing is they're calling people that they know and asking them for referrals. Therefore, being top of mind, right? It's like all circular. It's like being top of mind, staying in touch with your network. I'll give you an example. In 2015, we had just sold the company and had been commuting to Austin, Texas from DC. And I went to see a CEO that I know, just went to see him in his office. And then the next day he called me up and he said, Ines, the very next day he had lunch with a guy who was looking for somebody with my expertise. You don't know, but being top of mind, being connected with your network, I think is the most critical part. I personally used to, post. I used to post for positions, and I got overwhelmed. I'd be watching TV with a stack of 200 resumes, trying to figure out, it became pretty overwhelming.
Where do you see, especially what you're doing today, when executives are coming to you for your advice today, where do you think you're spending most of your time advising companies that are going through growth?
All right. So your people are your company. Your people are your company. And the focus has to be on your employees. You know, it was Branson. I recently heard Branson, and he said, I don't care about my customers. I care about my employees. And if I take care of my employees, they will take care of my customers. And we can see those companies that, you know, like if you call, I've called a couple of times, not many, but a couple of times you call Amazon. You know, you can tell that people are enthusiastic, that people want to help you, right? People want to feel that they're part of a community and that they know the strategy of the company. Did you know that only 40% of all working Americans know the strategy of their company? Only 40%. And I still think that's high, right? I did research on this. And 70 to 80% of working Americans hate their jobs. People don't like their jobs because they come into work, they were interviewed, they end up not doing the job that they were interviewed. They have managers who don't have people skills because they got promoted into those positions. They don't have people skills. And so, and off you go. So that's number one for everybody. Number one, it's taking a look at your employees. Do they know your company's strategy? How are you communicating with them? Right?
Mm-hmm. It's funny how we, you know, obviously my corporate offices are up here in upstate New York, Rochester, New York. And, you know, one of our very well-known companies up here today is Wegmans.
Yeah.
I think you have Wegmans down in your area. And I've been fortunate to get to know the Wegmans family, Danny obviously being a chairman. And I love his philosophy. He goes, we don't sell, we're not a, you know, we're not a shopping market company. We're an HR company that happens to sell produce. I love that.
That's it.
I love that. That's why they're one of the top 5 companies every year for the best companies in the world to work for. I mean, nobody will leave them. You know, everybody stays there. And that's why it's funny. That's why I emphasize so heavily on the coaching of your own network. You know, why are we going to the generic marketplace, to the job boards, to the world that we don't know? Why aren't we staying connected with the people we do know? Because that's where the relationships are. Those are the people that we can trust, the people we can work off. And that's why, again, you know, you get to your process of how you communicate to your wonderful network and how well you get such a great response. It's because, you know, that's where that connection really is. That's where the respect really is. And let's work off of that as much as the strength of growing inside of your company and making sure that you're building great relationships inside your company. We want to do the same thing externally. And of course, you do such a wonderful job with that. I know my audience, I keep emphasizing this with you, but I wish all of my audience could get to know you personally to realize how much of a forefront thinker you are when it comes to, you know, utilizing your network to create opportunities at this point. You know, besides your company, what are some of the other wonderful things that you're involved in because of networking?
Okay, so I am with an association for enterprise growth. We're a group of people who we network with each other, and the organization promotes the group, right? I was just, Georgetown University invited me to talk to their executive MBA program. And I talked to them about transformation, right? Transformation solutions. And obviously that program is all adults who have their own companies and, you know, wanted some insight as they grow. I am on the board of the Maryland Technology Council, Maryland Technology Venture, entrepreneur group. And this all came about because of the networking and reaching out to people. And I got to be on boards of different organizations because they asked me to join.
So what if you get a lot of execs that come to you? There's no question, your network's big. Clearly the strength is network for you now and your relationships, and people want to utilize that. I mean, a lot of people are coming to you with those similar questions today of, simply because everybody has really taken the networking thing for granted for so many years, just like you did, right? What are the top three things you tell them? I mean, obviously, overwhelming somebody with too much information isn't going to help them. What do you say to begin with in a simple kind of approach of giving that initial foundation of, listen, this is how you need to get started. This would be my recommendations, when it comes to getting your career organized. What do you tell them?
From a career perspective, you're asking, not their company. Okay.
Right, from a career perspective.
Right. So from a career perspective, and I just, as you know, recommended a couple of people to Phello. They, first of all, they need to download their LinkedIn contacts. They need to, tag all their contacts. They need to campaign to them. They need to have what is their value proposition. So this is number one issue with everybody, right? What is your value proposition? Who are you, right? That no one else in the world, and it's important because you can identify that, right? You can identify what is your strength. It's just stunning that people can't even do their resume because they don't know what their value proposition is out in the market for them, right?
But I got to ask you a question on this, because obviously you've gone through this process of going from not networking to networking. How did you overcome? I think people are mind boggled a little bit, and I hear this myself. They have 800 connections, they have 1,200 connections, they have 2,000. I mean, again, people have just connected without thinking about it much, right? We all did it. I did it too, of just connecting, because that was just seemed like a trend, and everybody wanted to get to 500 connections. How did you mentally get over that hump of all these connections? It's too overwhelming. I'm just not going to do it. Because that's why a lot of people think, and that too, where it's just, they think of that number and how overwhelming it is, and then they just get discouraged and then just end up not doing it. What made you get over that hump? I mean, to realize that I have to do this.
You have to be driven, all right? Do you want to go get a job or not, right? Do you want to be a year from now looking for a job, or do you want to potentially in the next 3 to 6 months be able to at a minimum be interviewing, right? Do you need the money? Do you need, do you have a family? Do you have kids? If you don't have a wife that's working and you're the sole, I've always, I have now it's an adult kid, but I was the sole bread earner. Mm-hmm. That drove me in my whole career. And then when I got to this point, it always drove me. You have to want to succeed. What drives you personally? What's your internal personal drivers? Sure, it's a little overwhelming. That's the truth. But the driver to succeed is way more important.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about, obviously since you've had the chance to organize, what are the things that you think that it has stimulated you from, a couple years ago when you first started the organization, your contacts, compared to today? I mean, has it allowed you, because you've had a chance to look at your network a little more holistically today, has it created more ideas for you to create business for yourself as a result of now looking at 30 years of a network?
So the driver part is success, right? When you're utilizing the tools that you have and you see the success, it's kind of great when you do a campaign and 200 people say, sure, I'll meet you, right, to go have lunch or have coffee, whatever. So that's the success part, and you can see it right away. It's like, it's fulfilling, right? That right away. And as you have said to me many times, it's also the strength of my network, right? by staying in touch, being persistent. Everybody doesn't answer you right away. It's okay. You got to, I've read material on LinkedIn. They tell you got to reach out like 10 times sometimes before somebody answers you. So you got to keep persistence through it. I don't know. I answered your question on that, but
that's okay. I was just, what's your opinion about the market moving forward, since you've had the ability to talk to more people and engage more in the career side, and obviously you've been fortunate to now use job boards, you've used LinkedIn, you've used, new platforms like Phello. Where do you think, if someone, as a technology evangelist, honestly, right, you've worked for all these technology companies the last 20 years. So you're building technology that people didn't see, right, that are using today, and you're pushing and moving forward. Where do you think technology is going and where the career market's going next? If you evaluate it today, where do you think things are going to go, and how are people going to find jobs, and how are people going to hire? What is your thought over the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years, do you think, just from your experience so far?
So obviously the cyberspace, right? Cybersecurity. We certainly see all these breaches, and so it's become critical. The other area which I was involved in was telemedicine. And that is really amazing on the telemedicine space. Your ability to be in your house, to dial up, to get a doctor. Some of them offer for $300, you buy a kit and you have a doctor and he can read what's going on with you. So telemedicine is like just going crazy. It's going to be, some needs FDA approval, so it's going to take a little longer. But the people in this space are just like dogs with a bone. They're just going to follow through because, they can see the money, right? They can see where that's headed. Cybersecurity.
What about when it comes to actually looking for jobs, though? Career-wise.
Training. If that's not your background, right? So this is one of the really most critical things, and I read about it all the time, right? Is like I was in telecom, right? Well, telecom is now not what it used to be. We had divestiture, it broke everything up. Now we're back to AT&T, Sprint, right? You're kind of back together again. And they're big companies, they aren't entrepreneurial companies. So if I wanted to today go, just like when I started and I went to GW, right? To take engineering classes because I needed to learn the new technology that I certainly didn't know. That's what you're going to have to do. If you see an area that you're passionate about, but you don't have that background, you will need to go get additional training. It's not any different than 30 years ago. It's the same thing. And, they talk a lot about this where, in Detroit or other areas of a country where once it was blooming, and now it's diminished. People need to get training on some other areas.
Yeah, that's
AI, artificial intelligence, the whole robotics area. Those are all very technical. Right. And if you're really interested in it, and you have to really be interested because, you're going to go through some intensive training. You might end up going back to college for it.
So, overall, and to kind of conclude here, Ines has a absolute wonderful company called Enterprise Transformation Solutions. It's transformationsolutions.pro. And she loves to network. She's got a wonderful technology executive background. She loves to strategize on building and growing business. So if you're in a position that you want to reach out to Ines and get some support from a growth from your business, no matter what size company you are, right? I'm assuming Ines, right? No matter the size of the business, no matter where you are in the world, she will, she can help support you. And again, she's involved in a lot of wonderful executive societies and associations. So as you think about networking, opening the doors up and opening the networking to lots of societies and associations. Is one of my big belief in the next phase of career development. We'll be focusing, not only on software as a service, but, narrowing the world down to controllable networks. Having tens of thousands of people doesn't help you. Ines has had the ability to connect with the right people at the right level, connect in the right geography, to help her build her network. So if you need some advice with your company, boy, I can't recommend anybody better than Ines. So I would definitely, is transformationsolutions.pro, is that the best place to go? Is there anything else that you want to let the...
they can email me. They can email me at ILE, as in boy, OW, Lebow, at transformationsolutions.pro.
Okay. And what is just to let the audience know, when they reach out to you and they talk to you, what is the typical process like to begin with? How do you start the engagement off with your company, with that particular organization?
So I would like to know what issues they're having, what help I can be providing them. We have a diagnostic tool that we will pretty quickly baseline where the company is. And after we do that, we work with them and do a detailed implementable plan and a roadmap, and we execute.
So what is it? I mean, I'm assuming that there really isn't any sort of length of time with this process. I mean, every company is a little bit different of how you take them through and where they're at, but the goal is, and typically, are you working directly with the CEOs of the companies?
Either I work with the CEO of the companies, or in one of my engagements, I've been working with the chief operating officer who runs all of operations. And the engagement has been 8 hours a week, not 4 and 4 hours. And then she calls me when she gets stuck or needs help in between the times we meet.
Okay.
And so here, as far as length of time, it's really hard. If you need a total transformation, right, that your company doesn't have structure, process, procedures, and we're going to have to make a lot of changes, that can take up to a year.
Okay.
But if I have a $6 million company, in 3 years, he got to 6 million, which is amazing. And he was stuck. In 6 months, we were able to figure out what the issue was, fix the issue, and get him off to his next stage of profitability.
And I believe, too, that you have quite a bit of a support system of other executives that support you. So when you go into these companies, in a lot of cases, it's not just you. You have an entire support system that goes along with you, depending on what the wants and needs are of that company. Is that correct?
Right. I have 23 partners that work with me that are part of the process. Yeah.
So just know from, out in the audience today, like I said, and this is where networking is so important. When you engage with professionals and executives just like Ines, this is what happens, right? You go from being an executive of a company to now a collaboration of a partnership of all these wonderful executives and helping and supporting companies around the world. And, Ines is going to grow companies too. So even communicating with her, and she may not be able to help your company, but she may be able to help you personally. And that's all what networking is all about. And that's one of the wonderful reasons why I like to talk with Ines so much, is because it's, we all sometimes need to just step back and look at the big picture. It's not just a job description and a bulletized resume and how it all matches up. Networking creates opportunities in so many ways. You have to be open-minded, to begin with. And so if anything, if you reach out to Ines, you're going to learn a ton. You're going to learn a lot. So I can't say enough about Ines and all that she's done in her career. And I have such high respect for you, Ines. So thank you so much for being a part of, the podcast. And, I really appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. So have a wonderful day, and everybody else have a wonderful day. And I look forward to our next podcast. Have a great day.
Thank you.